How's it going? Ryan here at etrailer.com. Today we're going to be taking a look at our best trailer wiring options for our 2019 Buick Enclave. There's going to be two different styles of wiring available. The first is going to be a 4-pole connector, and the other is going to be a 7-way connector. However, let's go ahead and talk about our 4-pole options first. So here we're going to have the Curt T-connector vehicle wiring harness. And over here, we're going to have the Tekonsha T1 vehicle wiring harness. Now the wiring is very similar in a lot of ways. However, I did find a couple of differences. The first one I noticed is that the Tekonsha wiring is going to be a little bit longer than the Curt. Another thing I noticed, in my opinion, I feel like the wiring is going to be a little bit thicker and just more heavy duty, like it'll hold up better. And the very last thing is in regards to the dust cap. The Tekonsha dust cap, in my opinion, is going to be a little more well-made and just a little more robust, which in turn will help keep our terminals a little more protected because it's going to do a better job of keeping all the elements out. But that's not to say that the Curt is going to be so short that you can't mount it in all your typical spots. It's still going to give us more than enough length to be able to do so. So regardless on whichever one that you choose, they're both going to get the job done and have no problem providing us with all of our necessary lighting functions. And that's because they're going to put out the same amount of power. And that power is 7.5 amps per circuit. And why that power output is important is because if you happen to have an old trailer or even a newer one with those traditional style incandescent bulbs, these are going to have no problem getting those powered up. And one thing I really like about both of them is that we're going to be able to completely hide them whenever we're not using them. And that's because the Enclave is going to have a little access panel. So whenever we take this off to do some towing, our wiring is going to be ready to use. Now, a couple of things I would recommend, regardless on which wiring you choose to use, is picking up some bracketry. That way you're able to mount it like this. And the other thing would be some dielectric grease. And that's to help prevent any corrosion. Every now and again, if you put some of that grease on, it'll keep your wiring in good shape. And both of those things can be found here at etrailer.com. Now ultimately, these are both going to be very easy to install, because essentially they're just plug and play. But if I had to personally choose one for my Enclave, I think I would go with the Tekonsha, and that's because of those minor differences I explained a moment ago. So moving on to our 7-way options, here we're going to have the Curt T-connector vehicle wiring harness, and here we're going to have the Tekonsha T1 vehicle wiring harness. Again, the wiring is very similar to each other, but I did find a couple of minor differences. The first one being that the Tekonsha is longer in length, and that's just going to give you a few more different mounting options whenever you go to put it on your car. But that doesn't mean that the Curt is going to be so short that you can't typically mount it where you traditionally would. And in this case, in my opinion, the Curt wiring does feel a little thicker and more robust, and that should hold up over time a little bit better. So if you can kind of notice, especially with the wiring here in the center, you can really tell the difference between the Tekonsha, the thickness of the wire, compared to the Curt. So other than that, these are both going to come with everything you need and get the job done. And they're both going to install the same way, since they are just plug and play. As far as the 7-way connector itself goes, they're both going to be extremely similar, and they're both going to have a spring-loaded cap to help keep any dirt and debris outside of it. I also really like the fact how both of them come with wire loom on them already, because sometimes that can be kind of a pain to do that when it's on the car. Now, as far as the power output goes, the Tekonsha's is not listed, but the Curt is going to have 10 amps per circuit for all of your lights. It's also going to put out 30 amps for your power circuit and 20 amps for your trailer brakes. But with that being said, they're both going to be able to illuminate any incandescent or LED style bulbs and work for just about anything that you might have. Now, if I had to choose wiring for my own personal Enclave, I personally think I would go with the Curt. That's because, in my opinion, it just feels like it's constructed a little bit better. So in summary, when it comes to the 4-pole wiring, I found that the Tekonsha feels like it's just going to be built a little bit better. And it's going to give us a little more options as far as mounting locations goes, because it is going to be a little bit longer. And as far as the 7 ways goes, I found that the Curt feels like it's just going to be constructed a little bit better. But as far as mounting locations, the Tekonsha, because of its length, is going to give us a few more options. And that'll finish up our look for our best trailer wiring options on our Buick Enclave. I hope you find this information useful and it helps you decide which wiring is going to work best for you.